Who are some people who died telling us the truth? There was a shunned Japanese politician who had spent a lot of his town's budget on building a tsunami wall that was built higher than any tsunami ever recorded in the area. Almost all people in that town cursed him for wasting their money until his death. Then came the big 2011 triple disaster in Japan. No one from the town died thanks to the barrier which withheld the biggest tsunami to ever hit. The Idaho cult mom, Lori Vallow's husband, Charles. Not only did he know she was going to kill him, but he also knew the kids were in danger and begged the police to address the fact that she was clearly not mentally stable. He finally got the police to require a mental health exam for her, but there's audio of the police officers telling her how to pass it and treating her like a victim of her husband. The audio of him talking to the police is really depressing. Guy is just begging them for help and they basically patted him on the head. He was right and now he's dead and so are those poor kids. Really depressing case. Ignaz Semmelweis. The first doctor to implement hand washing in hospitals. It's saved millions of lives and is the single greatest innovation in medicine. For his radical theory, that doctors were killing patients by not washing their hands, he was shunned from the medical profession by his peers. The rejection and failure to adopt hand washing drove him mad. His rival took his job and had him sent to the asylum. He died 4 days after being committed, from injuries he sustained from being beaten in the ward. Years after his death, his theories about hand washing were proven correct. Today he's known as the savior of mothers because he first proved hand washing saved lives by implementing it in the birthing ward, where 1 in 4 women died at the hospital during birth. This was because doctors would handle cadavers and then immediately attend to birthing mothers, infecting them. After hand washing was implemented, the rate of death for birthing mothers dropped to less than 5%. Father Minkler. He was a whistleblower priest in the Diocese of Albany who exposed a horrific pedophile priest and the bishop of the diocese for child sexual abuse and also covering for other clerics doing the same thing. He wrote a letter to the Vatican on the matter and it got back to the bishop, who was enraged and denied the allegations vehemently. For 4 years the bishop didn't know who wrote the letter until a TV station reported it was Father Minkler. The next day Father Minkler was called to the chancery and forced to sign a letter drafter by the bishop's legal counsel denying writing the letter or that the bishop and this priest were guilty of child abuse. 2 days later he was conveniently found dead in his home by his sister. At first it was ruled a heart attack and then changed to a suicide. The diocese produced his signed statement recanting the letter he wrote and the bishop claimed exoneration. There was a bottle of pills found near the priest's body later determined to be muscles relaxers. The church claimed the priest intentionally overdosed on these pills and died. They also claimed he left a suicide note. However, no drugs were found in his system and no suicide note has ever been produced. I believe Father Minkler was murdered for doing the right thing. He was posthumously vindicated after the bishop was deposed in 2019 and finally admitted to having committed sexual abuse against children and covering for others. There are currently 7 lawsuits pending against the diocese due to his abuse. Natasha Jate. She exposed a huge pedophile/human traffic ring in Argentina involving the football/soccer industry, celebrities, the government, and overall big names across the country. A short time later she was found dead in a bathtub, faked as an overdose. Some time before that, she'd tweeted, "If I die, I did not kill myself. We remember you, Natasha. Always." Edit. She was actually found dead on a bed with a bottle of pills. Thanks to the commenter below. The bathtub one was Alberto Nisman, yet another brave soul killed the literal day before he was supposed to show up in court with evidence against the government's corruption. He had a gunshot wound in his head and they said he killed himself. Edit 2, her tweet, said, "I'm not going to kill myself, I'm not going to overdose and drown in a bathtub, I'm not going to shoot myself, so if this happens, no, it wasn't me." Save this tweet. Not exactly what I think this prompt is aiming at, but these are some examples of people who died while spreading the word of the disasters that killed them. 1. Vince Coleman, a train dispatcher who sent word of the Halifax explosion to an incoming train before dying in the explosion. 2. David A. Johnston, volcanologist who sent word that Mt. St. Helens was erupting before being killed in the blast. 3. The radio operators on the Titanic, they were still sending messages even as the ship was actively sinking. Vladimir Komarov, one of the first Russian cosmonauts. He knew the Soyuz space capsule was unsafe, he told them repeatedly, but flew anyway to spare the life of his replacement pilot. Before liftoff he demanded that when he died, all officials at the Kremlin would have to attend his funeral and see what they did to him. All they were able to retrieve was a charred heel bone. Top image are the Kremlin officials at his open casket funeral. John O'Neill, headed the investigation of the attack on the USS Cole. Warned FBI about Al-Qaeda and Bin Laden. Was basically told to shut up. Left the FBI to head security at the World Trade Center because he knew there would be another attack there eventually after the first car bombing in the parking ramp. He died on 911. Caruana Galizia. The journalist who broke the story about the Panama Papers. Herbert von Bose. He was a government official who leaked a lot Nazi atrocities and was subsequently murdered during the Night of Long Knives. Karen Silkwood. From Wikipedia. Karen Gay Silkwood, February 19, 1946 – November 13, 1974, was an American chemical technician and labor union activist known for raising concerns about corporate practices related to health and safety in a nuclear facility. After testifying to the Atomic Energy Commission about her concerns, she was found to have plutonium contamination on her body and in her home. While driving to meet with a New York Times journalist and an official of her union's national office, she died in a car crash under unclear circumstances. Link to Wikipedia entry on Karen Silkwood. That guy who got crushed to death with rocks in the Salem trials. Giles Corey, I believe. Sergei Magnitsky, whistleblower of corruption in the Russian government including human rights violations and strong opponent of Vladimir Putin. While in prison he died 1 week before his court date to testify from what was originally deemed malnourishment and an untreated heart condition with medical neglect. An investigation later found that he had been severely assaulted shortly before his death. Bob Ebeling. Him and 4 other engineers told NASA to delay the Challenger mission. Most of us know what happened on January 28, 1986. Dr. Li was widely regarded in China as a heroic truth-teller. He had been punished by the authorities for trying to warn others about the virus, and then, in a terrible turn, had become severely sickened by it. Weeks later, he would become China's most famous fatality of the emerging pandemic. He was 34. The New York Times about COVID-19. What are signs someone is a horrible person deep down? Constantly talking shit about whatever friends are not present at the time. How dare you be mad I did something horrible? Diane's quote from BoJack is great. That's the thing. I don't think I believe in deep down. I kinda think all you are is just the things that you do. They use intimate/vulnerable things you share with them against you. Only being nice to people who can be useful to them. Sometimes there are none. When they love making other people look bad, constantly calling people out. Putting others down. Disrespecting hospitality workers. Lack of accountability. It's always someone else's fault. They are proud of their trashy behaviors. Everywhere is their personal trash can. Choosing beggar. Attention seeker. Thinks that everyone owes them everything. Is only kind to others, when cameras are present. Treats service employees as second-class people. Turns people against other people. Everything is about something polarizing to them. Someone who isn't willing to change or grow. They don't take accountability and blame others. If they don't respect boundaries and also generally how they act in conflicts with others. How they treat people who are below them. They don't change as a person because they claim that people have to accept them for who they are, even if they are horrible human beings. They never own up to anything they did and manipulate others. Observe how they treat animals and people who can't defend themselves properly, children as well. What's a secret you will never tell your spouse or so? Her mother was interfering in our marriage constantly. I had an appointment with a lawyer to talk over options for divorce because I couldn't stand it anymore. Then her mother died suddenly. Heart attack. After the funeral, things got better, and here we are now married for 3 decades. She doesn't need to know that I left the Nintendo Switch you gifted me on a bus. The Switch that you see me using is a replacement that I bought on eBay. Remember when we were engaged and visited your mom in the hospital, and she let a fart so rank that your eyes watered and we still talk about it 20 years later? That was me. Sometimes when I shake the Kleenex outside, the spider isn't in it. That one time when went camping for 3 nights I left the garden hose on at home full blast and we got a $700 water bill. That I farted and him checking the entire house as well as asking the neighbors if they smelled anything because he thought it could be a gas leak was a waste of time. Early on in our relationship, I made breakfast for my then girlfriend and her kids using some pancake mix she had in the pantry. After making the pancakes and serving to them, I went to mix up a little more to make mine, and I realized there were some maggots in the dry mix. They were pretty much done eating, and telling me how good they were. I decided that ignorance was better than telling them. Taking that one to my grave. That I chipped our wonderful granite quartz counter, that he picked out, and filled it with white putty. I will take this to my grave. That the reason I lost my boner that one time in 69 position, not the year, was because a piece of TP fell in my eye from her butt. Edit, thank you so much for the awards. My first platinum is about toilet paper falling in my eye. To add some details, we do have a bidet, the TP was probably from the paper she used to dry herself after the bidet, so no pink eye for me. We have been together now for 13 years and have been married for almost 2 years. How we really met. He thinks a mutual friend decided to play matchmaker, which is true, but not the full picture. A friend of mine sent screenshots of my SOS dating app profile saying I've just found your future husband. Some light googling led me to discover we shared a mutual friend. I spoke to him and he played matchmaker. 6 years later, I'm never telling him that I basically stalked him first. Deleted. Every paycheck I take out $25 to $30 in small bills and slip some bills into her pockets while I'm folding laundry. Money is tight, and it's the source of a lot of anxiety for her. So to see how excited/relieved she gets when she finds it makes me happy. I saw on the call display that the jewelry store was calling. I let him answer it. He immediately left to run an errand and came home and took me out skating, where he romantically proposed on a frozen pond under a floodlight on a February evening. We'll be married 20 years this year. I can't tell him I knew the whole time. I just can't. EDA, we had gone a few weeks before to pick the ring out and we had talked in depth about getting engaged. It wasn't a complete surprise. But he did want his proposal to be a surprise and it really was special, even though I knew. I sleep better alone than with her, she loves sleeping together. Edit, wow, so this blew up way bigger than I was expecting. Will provide more context for my case. Although I haven't told her, I believe she suspects it, because she has been making suggestions such as sleeping more at my place. We don't live together at the moment. Usually, we pick up 2 single-person mattresses, don't know the exact term for it in English, and push them together on the floor. We have separate blankets. I'm really sensitive to heat and hardly feel cold, whereas her it's the opposite, she feels cold frequently, sometimes even when I'm hot, so compromising a room temperature it's often complicated, especially since she sleeps poorly when I turn the fan on. I believe my problem resides on, 1, sleeping in a different place, even if it's my room, it's on the floor, it's different, and, 2, temperature. If it's cold, usually it's better, but when it's hot it gets rough. Either I get bad sleep due to heat, or she gets bad sleep due to the fan turned on. That I pooped in the ocean while snorkeling off of Hawaii. And that was the reason for all the beautiful fish swarming around us all of a sudden. Bon appétit, dear fish. Yes, indeed, it was magical.